Hi. How to talk to a friend who is getting divorced. It's not very hard to guess where this comes from. Since it has been years from my divorce, I can talk about it quite easily now. But I knew that I was living in quite conservative environment in this area. But since half of the marriages end up in divorce, then everybody knows divorced people, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Or I thought it wouldn't be. But there were very many kind of reactions to my divorce, and maybe the oldest was the lady that was living next door to us or just few houses away, and our children played together, and her children are in the same school than mine, and when I got divorced, when I moved out of our apartment with children, then when I saw her at school, she just looked at me and then turned away and kept walking to the other direction. Usually we had always talked because we were in the same things at school with same parenting things, and now suddenly it was, I think, before Christmas. She didn't even nod, not even hi, not even, no, nothing. Like I wouldn't exist, like I would be some total stranger. But I've gotten over it, and I knew that she got divorced some years later. Uh, I do not wonder why, because his husband looks like a psychopath and acts like a psychopath, and I only can assume that there was abuse in the family, that there was violence. But of course, I do not know what goes on behind closed doors, and neither does anybody else. So that's maybe the starting point to think, what do you say to a friend who is getting divorced? Very many of us cannot like rehearse in advance, but maybe we should. Maybe we should think about what we say if somebody just blurts out that we are getting divorced and you didn't have any kind of feeling about that. You don't know why, but you have to react somehow. But like I said, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. It can be violence, can be a betrayal of some sort, can be multiple or one affair. We don't know when we hear the news that is the one person that is telling us the cause for divorce, or is she or he a victim? And that's maybe the biggest point. The person that decides that we have to get a divorce, that we have to go to our separate ways, is quite often the victim and not the cause. And most people blame the one that made the decision. And I was the one that made the decision. And the person that was my husband then objected. He didn't understand why. And that maybe tells a lot. But we don't know what's going on. We don't know, are we talking to the perpetrator or are we talking to the victim? Are we talking to the one that runs around and has affairs, or the ones who had been betrayed? And there are many kind of betrayals. I can tell you about one in my previous life, in previous marriage. We had a joint account, and we decided that we both put the same amount of money to that account every month. And from that account, we pay our groceries, no matter who is going to the grocery store. And I knew that it was always going to be me. So I didn't want to pay all the groceries for both of us because we both had a salary. So we agreed. And then if there is excess, then we can use it to travel. Very nice plan. And very many people make this kind of plans. And it wasn't very large amount of money that we decided to put on that account monthly because we didn't have very much expenses. But after a year, I started to wonder why there isn't more money in that account, because I knew how much our groceries cost. And then I looked at the bank statements of the year and realized that he hadn't put on money on that account at least 1.5 years. Not a single penny. And of course I got a little bit furious and asked him that, what is this? We agreed on this and you haven't put money in that account even once. And he just said, what are you nervous about? I will put money in there somewhere. There is money in that account. There is no problem. But if you are a normal person, you understand that it wasn't a large amount of money. A year's worth of groceries, it's not like a mortgage on a house, but it was the principle. We agreed that we will share these expenses in half, and we will do it by putting money in that account every month. When the salary comes to my account, I will put that amount to our joint account. And he didn't put money in there. When he got caught, he didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He acted like I was some kind of lunatic, some kind of nitty-witty person who makes a fuss about little things. And at that point, I realized, and I should have realized it much harder, that I can never trust that person. But I know that this kind of betrayals goes on in a much larger scale. I know that somebody has pawned somebody family cars, for example, and got money out of that, and then when you try to sell something, then people say that you cannot sell it, it's pawned. And money can be an issue in many kinds of ways. And for example, if one of the spouses use all of his money or her money to some hobby, old cars, makeup, handbags, whatever, drinking, drugs, then it's a betrayal in a financial sense. But of course, there is the other betrayal, affairs. It's very hard to even think about what goes on in that person's head, that the spouse have made the betrayal of having an affair. And because we cannot imagine, if you haven't been a victim of it, then we cannot know what to say. But because of this, I can say that what you don't want to say, what you shouldn't say when somebody tells you that they are getting a divorce, is that he or she was such a good spouse. Like I would say that he's such a wonderful man. Why are you getting a divorce? You always seem so happy. But if you are like me, or if they are like me, and they do not air their laundry outside, so you don't fight in public places, and you don't drink excessively, so you would tell these kind of things to a large amount of people or to someone who would gossip around, then people don't know. They don't know if things have been poorly for years. They just assume that you were so happy. You looked always so happy. Well, of course, when I go to dinner party, I smile. And I don't be nasty to my husband. I wouldn't maybe talk to him, but I wouldn't be nasty. It's just not good behavior. It's not good manners. So don't say that, well, he's or her or she is a good person. Are you sure that you are getting divorced? If somebody is getting through that kind of a ordeal, like divorce, especially with children and with with the house and with the mortgage and with the cars and with the dogs and with the in-laws. Nobody does that like willy-nilly and with, just for fun. No, there is always a reason, and there is a, of course, it's easy reason, and it's totally different thing if you just after 40 years of marriage end up in the situation that you see that you don't have anything in common anymore and you are just friends and you are not like husband and wife and you decide to divorce. Well, that's totally different thing, but I think that that's quite rare. And in that age, people don't ask anymore those stupid questions. They know better. They have seen so many divorces, so ugly divorces, that it's just another news for the day. They do not try to tell you what to do. Like to me, that this is a mistake, you should go back. You cannot break a family. But I didn't go it too lightly. I have thought it for years. And I have given chances and new chances and new chances. And they were all in vain. Nothing happened. He never understood what is wrong. He never understood that it is not just me that takes care of everything and just is like a maid and cook and nanny and everything. And on top of that, pays quite much for the expenses of the house and everything. So when you end up in a situation that you are very tired and you realize that the existence of your husband is just making you more tired and you get no help and it goes on for years, then it's a normal reaction to get rid of that one person that you have to take care of and take care of your children. But that's of course another issue. But nobody gets divorced like without thinking it thoroughly. Even though it's had been years, I still obviously get a little bit worked up about talking about it, talking about the frustration, the amount of frustration that was in my mind and in my heart and in my head when I ended up ending my marriage. But if you shouldn't say that he's a good man or she's a good wife and don't get divorced, if you have to say something, you just cannot be like not saying something. But don't say that he's a horrible person or she's a horrible person and you did the right thing. That's not nice either. And that comes to very mixed feelings, because if somebody trashes her or his spouse, it's like their right, but you don't have a right to trash somebody else's husband or wife. That leads to very like this kind of contradictory feelings, and you shouldn't do that. It's like their right, and you just listen and say that, oh, that sounds bad. But don't say that they are horrible persons. And what would your mother think? Because mothers and fathers are different things. The in-laws, their reaction is always something that you cannot expect. In this case, the reaction was not to look at me in the eyes anymore, like at all. And like I would have done something like killed some person or something really, really like radical. But that's another issue. But what should you say if somebody comes to tell you that they are getting a divorce? Of course, it's a difficult thing. So it's good to say that you are that, oh, that's sad. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that things have become that way. And do we want to talk about it? Can I help? Is there something that you need help with? Or what's your plan for the future? What are you going to do? Are you going to move out, or is your spouse going to move out? What are you going to do with the house? What are you going to do with the kids? What are you going to do with the dog and the car and the apple tree? Of course, you can ask that kind of questions, and if they don't want to answer, that this is just like very first start of this thing, then just okay. But I don't know, it depends on how close you are. Can you even, or is it even wise to ask why? Because that's a kind of personal question. And I have found that people that have, like, the spouses have had affairs, they usually don't want to tell anyone about it. They just say that we just drifted apart or something like that, and not that, well, he had an affair for 5 years with his secretary, and I found out that it felt kind of bad. And my husband is moving in with the secretary probably right now. So people don't want to tell that kind of things, because when your spouse has an affair, it's still, especially if husband has an affair, the question is, what did the wife do? Did she fill her marital duties? Was she sweet enough? Was she good enough cook? Was she nice enough? That's still one question that I hear like very many times. It's this kind of automat that if somebody said that they're having an affair, well, what does the wife do? And that's quite unreasonable too. People shouldn't say that. It's I don't know how many men have affairs because their wives do or don't do something. It's more than likely that they will have wants to have the adventure. But I don't know what else can you say. You can ask why if you want to, if they are close enough to you, or you can just say that, do you want to talk about it? Because then they can decide themselves, do they want to talk about why or not. But 50% of marriages end up in divorce, or that was an old statistic, so it's not unheard of. It's not a big deal in that kind of sense. It's a big deal for individuals, but it's not a big deal of like the measure of the society, or it might be better. And one thing that you shouldn't say to someone who is getting divorced, of course, is that you are going to find a better spouse in a whiff. And now we are going to the nightlife and nightclubs to find you a new spouse. That's just tacky. And it's just gross. Personally, I think that if people get divorced, it's a place to learn and to heal and to really like put your life together again. Like really to think, because oftentimes when we live with someone for a very long time, we start to live like partly their lives. So it's not just me and what I want, but it's what we want. And the person that has more leverage or more to say, they usually take over. And we mold our lives to suit their lives. But when you get a divorce, you have a chance to rebuild your life to look like you want it to look. And I think that that is the most important thing. So I wouldn't say that now you go to nightclub and parties and meet a new spouse, but take it easy and talk with your friends and hang out with your friends and rebuild your life. Get yourself in balance before you even think about going out and finding a new spouse, before starting a relationship. Because I've noticed, not in my own life, but in the life of my friends, that the relationships that has started just after something ends or even before usually don't hold. So they end up pretty quickly after the divorce, because people are in this kind of a middle situation with the marriage and divorce and the life after. So it would be better, and it would be more civilized, just to tell people to take care of themselves and not rush to next relationship. So if you want to ask me or hear my opinion, and if you face a friend who tells that they are getting a divorce, or even a child or your own parent, then try to keep your calm, and just answer them with understanding and with sympathy, that I'm sorry that your relationship is in that point. I truly am. Do you want to talk about it with me? I'm here if you need. And that's a good start. And that's a good continuance to a friendship. I hope you have a great day. I see you soon. Goodbye.